What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Golf on Tap. As always, I'm Jack Bushman, joined by Ross Baran. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman2. Go and give Ross a follow at RossJohn22. You can find the show's page at On Tap Golf. For everyone who's tuning in with us right off the jump here, make sure you go and jump on over to the YouTube feed. That way you can interact with us throughout the episode. Let us know what you thought of Hideki Matsuyama's chaotic victory yesterday at the FedEx St. Jude Championship. Whether you think Scotty Scheffler or Xander Schauffele is going to come away with the FedEx Cup this year, or you think it's going to be someone else, a wild card potentially, and also your early leans for this week's BMW St. Jude Championship. And also just a quick reminder, if you're not already following Golf on Tap on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, do us a favor, make sure to go and show us some support there. Won't cost you anything. 100% free. That way you can catch up with all the latest episodes if you're not able to join us live. Ross, we got an awesome episode on tap here today, my friend, and a pretty awesome finish to the FedEx St. Jude Championship. It's kind of become something we've gotten accustomed to over the last few years since this is turned into the first leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. And even prior to that, we've really seen some of the biggest and brightest stars on the PGA Tour come through and emerge victorious here. Hideki Matsuyama, the latest to crown the title of this tournament, not without a few hiccups along the road, Ross. As I've learned in my time betting on golf, my friend, it is literally never easy. That cakewalk wire-to-wire winner. I thought I had one earlier this year when I was watching Akshay at the Valero, my friend, and I learned that, a 7-shot lead can suddenly disappear in a heartbeat on the back nine. Hideki looked like he was on his way to cruise, and I'm sure you were, despite having a little bit of scar tissue from Max Grazerman last week, I'm sure there was still part of you that was feeling confident with the way that he was playing, but then all of a sudden, Hideki starts leaking oil. We reach the 16th. Victor Hovland out of nowhere suddenly has the lead. And then Hideki sacks up on two of the hardest holes on the course, 17 and 18, makes birdie at both to go and cement a 2-shot lead. I honestly don't even know if he was aware of the situation going into 18, Ross, because he played both his tee shot and his approach super aggressively. It all wound up working out. Congratulations on the Hideki ticket. Much deserved after the Grazerman heartbreak the week prior. Take us through your emotions throughout that ride with Hideki yesterday, how it feels to cash, and how you're doing on this Monday afternoon, my friend.
The emotions I felt yesterday were when he lost the lead, I pretty much sat there and just did head in hand and was just like, I'm the biggest fucking loser in the world. Like, 2 weeks, 5-shot lead, 14th hole, 2 weeks in a row, it's gone. And I went to a very negative place in my mind and just was like, well, no one comes back from that. Thank God Hideki has massive stones and was able to come back and pull it off. But yeah, no, there was a solid 45-minute stretch yesterday where I was just like, I'm the biggest fucking loser in the world. Like, who picks two guys at these kind of odds and they can lead 68 of 72 holes, and all of a sudden you lose a 5-shot lead on the 14th hole back-to-back weeks. So I'm riding a little high that it's nice to cash out this time and be on the winning end. But yeah, no, there was a solid 45 minutes where I accepted my fate that I was the biggest loser on the internet, and I was ready to take all my lashings from the Takesman squad, everyone, and just be like, this is my role in life. I am the punching bag that comes super close and gets a silver medal.
I was going to say,
of the internet, if you will.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm very happy that Hideki did end up pulling through for you, but as you mentioned to me via text message yesterday, it would have made some very incredible content had he have actually lost that, and I would have been thinking about what the speech could have looked like here on this Monday afternoon, Ross. Fortunately, that is not the case, though. But for whatever reason, man, I don't know. Something's been going on. Something's been in the air in these golf tournaments recently. It's turned into, even though Hideki still pulled through, it's kind of turned into the summer of choke jobs. I don't know what it is. We saw Grazerman, obviously, at the Wyndham. There was the Rahm back nine meltdown at the Olympics. Is that 3 consecutive events in a row? I can't remember at this point. If was 3M before the Olympics or was it after? I think it was before, right?
The week before, yes.
Yeah, so 3 consecutive events where there have just been absolutely wild finishes. And just a reminder that absolutely no lead is safe. But yeah, Ross, I could imagine what a whirlwind and a roller coaster ride of emotions it must have been for you yesterday, brother. What was the thoughts on the cash out situation there? I know you must have been peeping what the numbers the sports books were throwing at you a little bit.
Oh, of course I did, because I'm not dumb. I like money. Like, if I could get anything in that moment, I looked, and it once again happened so fast that he fell back down to earth, that it was like, well, do you want your original bet back? We'll give you that if you like. And it's at that point, it's just like, all right, I'm not a complete asshole. Like, I'll lose the money.
You just got to ride. I mean, that's one thing I personally have done. I've never been much of a cash out guy myself, even though like it is very tempting, and I 100% agree with you. I like money, and some money is always better than no money. I've just, if anything, I've always been a hedger. I've never been a cash outer, and I've only hedged once. It was actually at the Davis Thompson John Deere. That was the first time I ever hedged or thought of anything along those lines. But you made the bet. You had a reason. You felt something in your gut enough to make the bet. Sometimes you just gotta ride through the peaks and the valleys and just hope that at the end of the day everything comes back to level itself out. But congratulations, Hideki, man. Sacking up and hitting big shots down the stretch. I know it was much different circumstances, but we saw him do the same thing on Sunday at the Genesis Invitational earlier this year. That, I mean, it was his first win in over 2 years at the time. And I mean, we've always known Hideki has the capabilities, but now winning 2 of the bigger tournaments throughout the course of the year, he's in some really solid form. Entering this week, I'm really curious to see what the golf betting community is going to do with Hideki Matsuyama this week. But some other shout outs that I certainly wanted to give to players that were in the mix at the FedEx St. Jude Championship. We'll get to Xander Schauffele and Victor Hovland in just a moment. But Ross, before we jumped on air, I mentioned to you that I wanted to bring up Nick Dunlap, and to me, just how impressive, not only obviously going and getting that win earlier on in the season at the American Express, right, and then leaving Alabama to go and join the PGA Tour, that in alone of itself right there is a historic rookie amateur slash season, whatever you want to call it. He went on to, take his PGA Tour card. I think it was just an opportunity too good for him to pass up. And he went through his share of struggles and the grind of, being on the PGA Tour week in and week out and playing these courses that he had never seen before. It caught up to him. And I think we all expected Dunlap to go through his struggles, and no one would have really batted an eye had he ended the season with those struggles. I think everyone still would have been incredibly high on him going into next year. But Ross, for the kid at 20 years of age to grind it out and pick up that second win of the season at the Barracuda Championship, which he actually needed to do in order to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs, which I think is, even though he was an amateur, a flaw. He probably should be there if he's winning on the PGA Tour, right? For him to get that second victory, and then he had to go and have a good finish at St. Jude. And even though he kind of slipped a little bit down the stretch on Sunday, for him to not get lost in the moment and still realize that there was something of great importance that he was still playing for. 18 is no cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. We've seen countless players hit their ball into the water, some of the best players on the PGA Tour, time and time again. And for him to go in and grind out that par and to earn himself an opportunity to keep his season alive, man, I think it's just even more incredible. And I think is just another wrinkle to the impressive first campaign that Nick Dunlap has had on the PGA Tour this year, man. I think the future is so bright for him.
Well, the funny thing is, I believe we can go back to I'm pretty sure it was the Amex recording we did following his win. And you and I basically described how we thought this season was going to go to a T. I believe one of our thoughts was, I think he's gonna turn pro. I think that the pros outweigh the cons. Because at that point he was still going back to Alabama and thinking about it, and we pretty much covered that think he's going to turn pro. I think he's going to have the come to earth moment and realize just how fucking hard this actually is. But in mid to late summer, I said I wouldn't be surprised to see Nick Dunlap win an alternate field event or something again when he comes back around. Won the Barracuda, gets hot at the right time. And a whole other thing is the whole FedEx Cup scoring is just absolutely atrocious and weird that he's in solo second finishing, and then it's showing, oh, he's 11th and 12th in the scoring. Then he double bogeys and falls back to 4 shots back, and it's like, oh, he's 49th. He's on the cut. And it's like, what the fuck was that? Like, how does that mathematically make sense? He goes from second in the tournament and has all these points to he's basically in the top 10. He's going to Eastlake to, oh, he might not even play next week now after that one hole. Like,
yeah,
what the fuck
really,
is that scoring? We need to figure that out. That is just atrocious. But I digress. But the way he's put the season together, absolutely phenomenal. I am hoping he's one of the people I actually have circled. I'm hoping he does participate in FedEx Fall and just continue to play some of these other events, because I do think there's a chance for him to go get another 1 or 2 of these events. And then by the time we get into January and we start next year, I would not be surprised if we're discussing Nick Dunlap winning 3 or 4 events on his first year on the tour.
Yeah, he's clearly that talented, and because of his talent being on full display numerous times this season, Ross, I did want to ask you, do you think there's any chance that Nick Dunlap plays for the United States in the President's Cup? And actually, this is the final week to secure a top 6 spot in the FedEx Cup standings, which will, in the President's Cup standings, to punch your ticket on that team. Top 6 for the United States, top 6 for the internationals. Ross, looking at the standings right now, obviously things aren't going to shake out exactly how they have listed as the top 12. Guys 7 through 12 aren't necessarily going to be the captain's picks for either squad, but do you think we could see Nick Dunlap on this team?
It's one of those things that I am not entirely sure how much influence someone like Keegan Bradley is going to have on this, being a vice captain. But in terms of how Keegan was talking about how he wants his team for next year for the Ryder Cup, he was thinking about giving guys like this an opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised to them to take a long look and him being the 12th man, final guy on the roster. Like, fuck it, what do we have to lose?
I think the exact same thing here. And just looking at the President's Cup standings and how things shake out, first off, what I'll say is I think it would be incredibly wise to give a young guy like Nick Dunlap this opportunity, because calling a spade here, the President's Cup, I think we all know, is the diet version of the Ryder Cup, and it sure looks like Nick Dunlap is going to be hitting important shots for the red, white, and blue in a lot of Ryder Cups down the road. I feel like it would only be smart to give him an opportunity like this, and he's deserving of it. The kid's won twice this year. And looking at the standings here, Ross, so obviously the top 6, they get locked in. The top 6 right now are Scotty, Xander, Colin, Wyndham, Cantlay, and Sahith. And quite honestly, the points aren't really close. Finau is at number 7, and he's still 500 points behind Sahith. I don't know exactly how the point structure works, but it seems like Finau would have to have a pretty notable week, probably something in the top 3 in order to jump Sahith, I'd imagine. So I feel like those 6, and they're all going to be there, those top 6 guys that I just mentioned. But here's 7 through 12 right now, Ross. And I think this kind of adds to the point that Nick Dunlap should be on this team. Here's 7 through 12 for you, bro. Tony Finau is 7. Russell Henley is 8. Homa is 9. Harmon's 10. Burns is 11. And Akshay is 12. So out of those 6 guys right there, I think Finau probably is going to be on the team. I think Russell Henley should probably be on the team for the way that he's played in major championships this year, even though he doesn't have a win. Really good major year. He probably deserves this opportunity. I think Sam Burns probably makes the team. Also doesn't hurt that he's Scotty Scheffler's butt buddy. And then I think Akshay Bhatia is another guy similar to Nick Dunlap that they're going to probably want to vet for a situation like this, I'd imagine. Akshay's 12th right now. I think he should make the team. And then after Akshay, it kind of falls off a cliff. Like we have Chris Kirk, Eric Cole, Denny McCarthy, Justin Thomas, Billy Horschel, Keegan Bradley. Like it's kind of off a cliff there. So to me, the two guys in those 7 to 12 spots, let me know your thoughts about this, Ross. To me, the two guys that I don't think really should be on this team are Max Homa and Brian Harman. Max Homa really, he's playing like absolutely awful golf. He's literally spent more time, not to knock on the guy, he spent more time crying on the golf course than being in contention this summer. And Brian Harman, I know he won a major last year, but it hasn't been a particularly bright season for him either. And I just think those are two guys potentially who I could see a Nick Dunlap jumping in for there. And I could see a vet like Billy Horschel. And I know we have some bias for our boy here, Billy Ho, but feels like he could be a good veteran vibes add on the back half of that list. What do you kind of think of that assessment? I know I just gave you a lot there, but what do you think about all that, Ross?
I'm gonna be a little aggressive with the take here.
Let's get it.
Between 7 and 12, there's only one person that I think is worth having on that team, and that's Akshay.
I mean, actually worthwhile. I don't disagree with you, but like, who are the better options?
At that point, I think that's where it opens the door for picking people like Nick Dunlap and saying, "What the fuck? What the fuck? Let's see what happens." Because let's be honest, Tony Finau, Russell Henley, Max Homa, Brian Harman, Sam Burns, the best of the rest. Congratulations that you guys consistently finished 25th every week on the tour, enough times to get enough points to be in the top 12. Like, honestly, if you really want to make a case, between 7 and 22 on the list, give me Akshay, Billy Horschel, and Davis Thompson would be the three people I would pick that I want to see is a captain's pick, because fuck it, what do we have to lose? Because I think 7 and 22 on that list, you could make a case for any combination of anyone.
Yeah, I would like to see Davis Thompson on there. I think he's just probably behind Nick Dunlap at this point. But I mean, for real, the back end of this team is not very strong. And I think that is pretty telling of like, just
once you get outside number 6 and Sahith, yeah. I think it literally becomes between 7 and number. Obviously, they cut off at like number 23 unless it becomes or 25 unless it becomes a true captain's pick like Nick Dunlap for the amount of points. Well, I think once you get outside the top 6, I think 7 through 25, you could throw a dart at the wall and whatever name it hits is like, oh, that makes sense.
There are certain guys that are not going to take though here though. Like Taylor Moore's not going, Tom Hoagie's not going, Poston's not going. I don't think Eric Cole's going. I don't think Chris Kirk's going.
But then I think you can make a case for someone like Austin Eckroat. I think you can make a case for someone like Davis Thompson. Obviously Billy Horschel, I think, should be on the fucking team the way he's playing right now.
Agreed. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shakes out, though. Really interesting to see.
I just the way I look at it, that 7 through 12. There is legit one guy in that 7 through 12 range that I legitimately think should be on the team, and it's number 12, Akshay. I think the other 5 in that range are, you were the best of the rest. Congratulations, y'all finished average 20 every single week of the tournament, but you didn't really do anything outside of finishing in the top 20 all year. Like, give me a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. It's been a pretty unimpressive year, except for the top end Americans. Like in terms of depth, we really haven't had that. So yeah, going to be interesting to see what winds up being the decisions there, Ross. But getting back to the FedEx St. Jude, I did want to also touch on the tough finish from our boy Tom Kim, who also was part of Joey Ricotta's betting card this past week. Joey also used Tom Kim in the one and done, and he had about the harshest finish possible to put him on the outside and not qualify in the top 50 of the FedEx Cup standings to keep his season moving on to the BMW Championship. It is a bogey double from Tom Kim of a finish, along with a good mashing of the greens along the way. Not a very happy Tom Kim. Tough to see that that oil leaking from Tom's ship there. And as you brought up too, how was Tom Kim that much on the bubble? I know his beginning of the season was not very good, but I feel like there are guys that played worse than Tom Kim this year who's made it to the BMW Championship this week.
It just leads into the FedEx Cup points just don't fucking make sense, man. And I mean, I think the perfect case in point was seeing Tom Kim after the season he had, where second half of the season, he was basically on one of our cards almost every single week that we think it's going to be his week because he's playing so well. So all of a sudden, the first round of the playoffs is like, oh, he's on the bubble? Like, to not move on? How? And then we're watching someone like Nick Dunlap is, like we said before, is fucking tied for second, and they're showing him, oh, current projected going to be 11th in the FedEx Cup. Double bogeys one hole, and they're like, oh, he's 3 shots off the lead. Now he's 48th. He really needs to birdie these next 2 if he's going to make the cut on the next week. And it's like, how the fuck does that make sense with their metrics?
Yeah, some of these numbers just they're not adding up. Like just looking at some of Tom Kim's results here this year, he had a solo second at the Travelers Championship, which was a signature event, which should have given him a ton of points. T4 at the RBC Canadian Open. He admittedly didn't have a ton of like high-end finishes, but he still had good ones. T15 at the Genesis Scottish Open. He finished inside the top 30 in 3 of the 4 major championships that he played in this year. T18 at the RBC Heritage, that's a signature event. T24 at the Genesis Invitational. T17 at Phoenix. Yeah, I don't really know how did Max Homa have a better year than Tom Kim?
So here's what just doesn't fucking make sense. Is perfect example is if you compare the United States team and the international team on points for the year, right? Max Homa is number 9 on the U.S. team list right now. Tom Kim would be number 10 on the U.S. team in points. He's number 2 on the international team. How the fuck does that make sense?
It's got to just be from, I mean, I know this is for the President's Cup, they're elongated standings because Homa did do some good stuff last year. But in terms of like the FedEx Cup standings, I feel like Homa hasn't contended at all this year. Like since the Masters, he hasn't done anything
since
good.
The Masters, he's been a dead fish.
Literally.
The Masters we thought was going to be his breakout party because he looked super confident and looked great, and then he just never followed up on it. It was like he put all his eggs in that basket, and that was it. And he's been a shell of himself since. I mean, I had a vibe on him this week because it's historically a good course for him. Or last week, historically he plays well there and finished fucking second to last.
Yeah, and the numbers are gross. I don't know how he made it this far. It has to be the Masters because after the Masters, which was played the week of April 14th, Max Homa has 1 finish inside the top 22. And he still made it to the BMW Championship. Don't get it.
Honestly, I'm looking. If you continue to look at like the U.S. standings,
it's bad.
The most fair like judgment in scoring. This is taking away the top 6, obviously. The most fair judgment in scoring, honestly, that I'm seeing, aside from, I think Akshay should be a little higher. To be completely honest, I think he should be higher than 12. Sam Burns at 11. I think if you told me after the season he's put on that Sam Burns is 11th and probably going to be like one of the second to last potential, captain's picks for that team, I would look at you and say that's fair. Based on the body of work, I'd see him being a bubble captain's pick. Like, majority of the year didn't show up, didn't do shit. The early to late summer went on a really nice swing to kind of end of the year where, all right, is like an 11 or 12 seed, like he's currently ranked in the points. Yes, that would be a fair judgment, I think. Everyone else ahead of him on that list, I don't know where the fuck you get those numbers.
We got to talk about...
and it's Russell Henley. I have nothing against Russell Henley. Just you haven't done anything big. You haven't done anything significant. I'm sorry. I'm kind of having a hard time buying you at number 8 on the list. If you want to throw in a discussion of him being like 12, like, again, a fringe captain's pick, fair enough. Good thing. The hardcore, like, more than likely locked in to be a tabbed is a pick. I don't like that. I'm sorry.
No,
These
I
FedEx
agree with you.
Cup and everything, that no, I don't get the scoring. This shit is weird. Maybe it's like Scotty said this weekend. The FedEx Cup is silly.
There's a lot of shit that the PGA Tour does that's silly. More on that in just a little bit. But we do have to talk about Sam Burns for a second, Ross, because I got a fucking bone to pick with this guy, dude. Fortunately for you, you had Hideki Matsuyama as well on your card. I was not as privy. Sam Burns was my only guy really in the mix going into the weekend. Billy Ho was also kind of there. Just never really could get it going in those final 2 rounds. But maybe this is a little bit. I thought this before, like when I was prepping the show and how I was going to phrase it. And I thought, maybe that's a little bit of a biased take. I don't know if you know who Rick Gaiman is and Rick Rungood. I listen to his podcast every single week, and he literally said this on his show. And I'm like, okay, good. I'm not the only one who thought this. Sam Burns probably should have won this golf tournament this past weekend. That might be a little bit of a reach, but legitimately, to think of where he was on Saturday and where he was in that round, it's not like his stuff was going sideways. It was literally one bad drive. And to snap his driver in that moment, which really came back to bite him in the butt because he had a 3-wood. I think it was at number 14 or 15 that wound up not carrying the water, led to a disastrous Saturday. But even then, he still had a chance on Sunday. And after, I think he was ranked 3rd or 2nd through 54 holes in strokes gained putting, literally couldn't get anything to drop. I was following all his shots on the PGA Tour app because, you can't trust the broadcast to show you every single shot of a guy in contention. That's another conversation we'll be having in a second here. But, following along with Sam Burns on the PGA Tour app, everything is between 11 and 20 feet, and he just couldn't make any putt whatsoever. He then makes the eagle at number 16, holing out of the bunker. I'm like, holy shit. Hideki's melting down the stretch here. I'm like, Sam Burns has a little bit of life. Misses a 16-footer on 17. And even then, he was still only at 14 under, heading to the 18th. And at that time, with the way Hideki was trending, it was looking like 15 might get this bad boy in a playoff, right? So I'm like, Sammy B, go and birdie 18. He had birdied 18 2 of the 3 days. I'm like, you got the driver in play, baby. Go and rip this mug. What does he do? He puts it in the fucking drink. I'm like, this fucking guy had so many chances throughout the weekend. Still finished T5, and he played like shit the entire weekend, dude. I was ready to rip my hair out at Sam Burns because he was right there, even though he did all that bonehead stuff on Saturday and Sunday, man. Real frustrating, let me tell you.
Well, you're going to be even more frustrated when I say, buddy, I completely agree with you that Sam Burns should have won this event. I think with Sam Burns breaking the driver, he easily gave the field 4 to 5 shots on that round, which he lost by 2 strokes. He gave the field at least 4 to 5, breaking that driver and being forced to go 3-wood for the second half of the 3rd round. I think it's the easiest cut and dry. The way he was playing would have played his way into contention, probably the top of the board by the end of the day. Where Hideki ran away with it at the end of the day Saturday, but it was a 5-shot lead on the field. I think Sam Burns probably would have been 2 or 3 back and made it a good pairing going into Sunday, and probably caught him the way Hideki struggled. I think Sam Burns easily gave the field 4 or 5 shots back just with this sheer stupidity of breaking the driver. I think Sam Burns 1,000% pissed away this tournament, and that was a chalk up, easy, huge career win for him.
Yeah, would have been a real big one. He hasn't won in a minute now. It's been a minute for Sam Burns, but yeah, and it wasn't even like he was running bad. I think he was 2 or 3 under on the front 9 up to that point when he had broken the driver. It looked like he had picked up where he left off from the day prior when I think he shot 63 to really cement himself to the top of the leaderboard and put himself in the mix. I knew once he broke that driver, man, I'm like, this is a bad omen. I don't like this.
You even posted the perfect video where they were complimenting him. They were literally complimenting him on his round, like, wow, looking so confident. Oh fuck, he broke it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't understand it. Don't understand that. Yeah. One that he's gonna look back at for sure. And they even showed on the broadcast a video of him after he hit the ball into the water on 18. He like crouched down and put his hands on my head. I'm like, that was me watching you the entire weekend, brother. So I'm glad you know how I feel right now. But yeah, real frustrating. That's one, it felt like it got away. It was a chance for me to go 3 in a row at TPC Southwind. I thought Burns was going to be the one to do it. And yeah, the driver snap, I knew that was going to be a bad omen. Speaking of bad omens, Rory McIlroy's entire 4 days at TPC Southwind was a bad omen. One of the worst performances of his entire career, which I will say, to be fair, in a non-cut event, he would have been cut after 2 rounds, and maybe there was a part of him that knew where he was in the FedEx Cup standings, and he maybe didn't really give a shit. Regardless, though, not a very good look for Rory McIlroy, a guy who's been known for being a killer at this time of the year and has 3 FedEx Cup titles, to nearly be DFL at the FedEx St. Jude Championship, never in contention whatsoever. I know there are a lot of people who were backing Rory because he was 10-1. It was a very fair number. I think the biggest number we had seen for Rory in a while, and had been playing some good golf outside of getting caught in the bad weather draw at the Open. It had been a pretty solid stretch for him. But what are your thoughts on Rory's poor performance? And do you think that should lead to any concern this week at the BMW Championship?
Honestly, no. I personally think we've hit the point in the year where, just like Scotty and all these other guys think this whole playoff format is just really fucking silly. I think Rory knows he's played his way to East Lake. He essentially he could fuck around and do whatever he wants, like, because it's still competition, right? Like, you still get a little bit of the thrill of the competition here, but like, Rory knows he's playing at East Lake in 3 weeks. Let's be honest. He knows he's already there. He's far enough ahead. He can fuck around, dick around, do whatever he wants. He got the Comcast business bonus of another $6 million on top of everything he's already made this year. He's got the PIP bonus coming through too. Like, Rory made like 14 or 15 million fucking dollars this past week just for being Rory McIlroy this year. I really don't think he gives a shit. He finished pretty much DFL in the St. Jude when it's 100 degrees in Memphis. If anything, he just wanted to just go sit back in the fucking clubhouse.
And also, I'm sure he's well aware that he's not out of this race whatsoever. And that was part of Scotty's gripe about the season-long race to the FedEx Cup. Well, really just comes down to what you do at East Lake. And I think that's kind of the fault in it. And I'm sure there are some people saying, well, of course Scotty feels this way. He's blown the lead at East Lake 2 consecutive years. But like, yeah, there's still truth to the matter here, though. Scotty has, this historic lead. It's still only going to get him 2 strokes at East Lake. It would have been the same advantage had he have only won by 1 point.
It's that. And then if you go vice versa from Rory's standpoint, the way he looks at it, oh, I finished dead last in St. Jude. Oh no, I'm gonna start 5 strokes behind Scotty at East Lake instead of 4.
Right. I thought it was funny.
Deal, right?
I thought it was funny how Scotty's like, yeah, I hate this format. And Rory's like, I love this format. It gives me a chance to win. That's why I got 3 of these, because he knows it's just, if you play one good tournament, you have a good 4 rounds at East Lake, you have a chance to win this thing regardless of where you're starting.
And I think this honestly does come down to, like, if you want to break it down for how silly it is, like, when you make this playoff format, like, if you're far enough ahead, you really don't have to give a shit the first 2 rounds. You know, like, if you're in the top 5, top 6, you punch your ticket. You're playing at East Lake. Do I give a fuck that it's 100 degrees in August in Memphis, Tennessee right now? No, I'm going to play as fast as I can to get back in the clubhouse and just be out of here.
Yeah, I was actually,
I'm still getting paid, right? It's a 70-man field. I'm still getting a fucking paycheck. Just how fast can I get back on my plane and get out of here? Because again, another big gripe with the way the FedEx Cup is staggered. I love St. Jude. Like, trust me, I think it's an awesome tournament. I think it could fit somewhere else in the schedule. I don't think it needs to be a FedEx Cup. And I get it's because of the sponsor and them based in Memphis and everything. But a fucking PGA Tour event in Memphis, Tennessee in August, it needs to be in Chicago. It needs to be in Boston. It needs to be in New York. It needs to be in a major market like that. Because that, like, it being in Denver this upcoming week, that's a hot spot. That's good. People will go to that shit, right? Just like it's in Atlanta at Eastlake. People will go to that. Memphis is a miss, and it's only there because of the sponsor. It needs to be back in somewhere like Medina. It needs to be at Bethpage. It needs to be it needs to be Brookline. It needs to be somewhere like that for the opening round.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. And we're missing on these markets, and we've been missing on them for the last couple of years now, right? Like Boston, huge fan base up there in the Boston, New England area. It's why the Travelers is such a renowned event, because it always draws such a good crowd. And the Boston folks are always raucous and rowdy, wanting to have a good time. Chicago would for sure draw a big crowd. I mean, just even seeing in person what was on hand at Olympia Fields last year, like, these are major opportunities that, yeah, I completely agree. The PGA Tour is missing out on, and would put these events in a little bit of a different spotlight, and they'd have a little bit more luster around them, because let's face it, man, and I don't mean to talk down about cities, but Memphis is not exactly a city that's going to be attracting people from other places to go there, if you know what I mean. So,
and I'm not saying like you have to ditch, like, the St. Jude could be a signature event.
St. Jude Classic.
Summer. Yeah, exactly. It can stay St. Jude Classic. It can be a signature event. You could easily swap out another one of the signature events. That's another thing we'll discuss, but
yeah,
you could easily swap it out with another one of them. It still has its draw. It's still FedEx getting their big moment in where their corporation, everything is based. You could still get it there. I just think there's a better place for it in the schedule, and you can have a better location like Chicago with Medina, or putting it at Brookline, or putting it at Bethpage is the opening round.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel the same way. Like, this is a great course. It's a great test from tee to green. I think it would fit marvelously as a signature event. You get those scores that we have kind of talked about, what we see the winning scores turn into in a lot of these signature events, somewhere between 14 and 16 under, where it's a good mix between a really stern test, and there still are guys who are capable of going low. I think it would mesh very well into that category. And I think, even before signature events were a thing, you would hold certain events in a little bit of an upper echelon. And I feel like that was one of them at that point in time. So I wouldn't be upset with it going back to that. And yeah, it could still serve a good purpose, because it's a great golf course. I really like a lot of things about the event, but yeah, this FedEx Cup playoffs, there's just so many things that don't make sense about it, and so many things that continuously don't make sense about the PGA Tour. Ross, before we get to the schedule here in just a second, did you feel the same way about the broadcast yesterday? It was in a season and year after year filled with bad broadcasts. Yesterday, I felt, was one of the worst I've truly ever seen.
Yesterday it took the number one seed for me. Yesterday was anytime anything fucking relevant that we want to see happen is commercial break. And it literally got to the point where I was going online and I was starting to get pissed off, like legit pissed off. Like, I just want to watch the goddamn golf. Like, it's heating up. We're coming down the stretch. Obviously, for another reason, I'm heating up because Hideki is blowing this lead and coming back down to earth. So I'm getting hot, and all of a sudden I'm very invested. And I'm trying to focus on watching the goddamn golf. And what's the one thing we won't do is show the goddamn golf. Is guys are 2-3 holes ahead, a stroke or two off the lead now because Hideki has come back down to earth. And here's a clutch birdie putt on 17 from so-and-so that could take him one shot off the lead. And it's like, and we'll be right back. What are you doing?
It's offensive. It is literally offensive. And one thing that I don't know if you've gotten to feel this way, playing through is offensive as well. And the amount of times that they go to playing through. But it felt like in that last hour, again, as it's a phenomenal conclusion to this tournament, so many notable players in the mix to take this thing down. And they weren't even showing playing through. They just went to a full-fledged commercial. And it's like, it's so bad. It's gotten to the point where I'm asking for playing through. I hate playing through. And I'm asking for it now at this point because that's how bad their broadcast is. It's so bad. And then don't even get me started on, and listen, I'm here all for interviewing the chairman or whoever he is of FedEx St. Jude. Pick a better time. Not in one of the more crucial points of the golf tournament when you're switching coverage over. There's a 10-minute lapse. Go on.
Here's a hint. You know, all those times where you put on playing through and we were like, no, this is not a good time to put on playing through. When you interview Sesh, put playing through on. Well, you interview Sesh. I can look at Sesh talk about how great St. Jude and FedEx and everything are. Like, because I support St. Jude. It's one of the charities we donate to every year. Awesome. Sesh on the left telling me about St. Jude and all the money they raised, and show me fucking Sam Burns on 17th hole on the right, please.
Yeah, it was, dude. I was screaming at my television. Every time it would go to commercial, I'd go and jump on Twitter. I'd see multiple tweets being like, "You're going to commercial now? Are you kidding me?" It's so offensive. It is so offensive, the coverage that they make us go through week in and week out. It's not surprising. These are the same people who absolutely butchered the fucking Ryder Cup, one of, an event that literally happens once every 2 years that people glam onto. They couldn't even do that right. I just don't understand. I would really like to have a conversation with someone who is in the broadcast booth, whoever it may be, and just be like, look, I'm not trying to be offensive to you. I have respect for your career and what you do as an individual, but what's the goal of this whole thing that you guys are doing? Like, what are you guys striving to do here? Because if it's to entertain fans, if it's to grow the game, if it's to show this sport that people love and want to watch week in and week out, I'm sorry, but you're falling short. And again, it's nothing personal to you. I'm sure you're a great person. But whatever is going on here as a team, as a powwow at NBC Sports, at Golf Channel, I'm sorry, but it's dog shit. It's dog shit. And it's the same stuff year in and year out. And that takes us to, I think, a good transition here, Ross. Same shit year in, year out. Let's just roll back the schedule. Oh, actually, we'll make one change. Jack, you'll get your tournament back. Canadian Open will be the week before the U.S. Open again. That's it. That's the only change because the PGA Tour is looking in the mirror, and apparently it's giving them 2 thumbs up right back. Smashing hit. 100% success rate. Everyone loves it. Legitimately. I don't know if they, and just from being a podcast host and being so in tune with the Blackhawks, not to get off topic here, but I know the front office that the Chicago Blackhawks have in place right now are very in tune with what fans are saying on social media as they're kind of transitioning and trying out some new ideas. They want that feedback from their listeners and from their fans who tune in. Is there any person out there who's putting on social media, good job, PGA Tour, you killed it this week? Like, where are they getting these ideas that they're knocking it out of the park? Like, where do they feel like they're doing such a good job? Because it's not from the fans. It's not. I promise you that. I haven't seen a single fan who thinks they're doing a good job. And don't even get me started about the proposed deal with Liv. That doesn't even sound like it's going to be finished by 2025. Like, such a failure.
What deal with Liv? Because I don't know if you've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed, but the last time any fucking thing came out about that again was about 4 months ago at this point.
We got a group together. We're going to go get this thing. We got the right guys in place. And then we got a big fat FU.
And then again on them rolling out this new schedule. First of all, the new schedule being the same fucking thing again. I just want to know, what do we have to do to get like one or two more signature or elevated events? Because I'm still on board with making a case that the National Opens should be a fucking elevated event. The Scottish and the Canadian, we bump it from 8, make it 10, but the Scottish and the Canadian, I think, are fully deserving of being an elevated signature fucking event.
Dude, let's hold on. And another thing too, even just not to like argue you adding 2 more signature events, there are signature events that don't need that status. And we already saw them acknowledge that with the Waste Management Phoenix Open. People are always going to go to that event. And I'm sure they want to reward the Northeastern fan base. And I honestly think if you don't have it as a signature event, so many players enjoy that atmosphere and playing there that they're still going to go. The Travelers, I don't think, needs that signature event status. The Arnold Palmer Invitational, Bay Hill, that's an illustrious course with an illustrious prize that people want to win. Guys are still going to show up there. You want to actually grow the game? Have them go to Canada. Have the who's who be there. The Scottish Open, dude, those courses, it's such a unique opportunity to be different from what we get week in and week out. We're talking about a tour that runs, 45, 46 of the 52 weeks of the year, right? There are opportunities for them to go and be different, and they just refuse to do it. The Scottish Open as a signature event, I think, would be excellent. And they're so thrown into this idea that let's have a signature event the week before the or a week after the major. You could make it so the Open and the Scottish both are right next to each other, can move the Scottish to after. Guys are still going to be over in Europe. Like, that would be a smashing hit. And you give the fans over there an opportunity to see the best of the best for 2 consecutive weeks. It just,
I mean, you've already got guys have it marked down on their calendar. In September, you already have a shitload of guys that are going back over for the Irish.
It tells you they want to go.
National Opens mean shit to people.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, it's the only one we throw out is we're not going to talk about the fucking Mexico Open. Okay?
I don't think Vedanta Vallarta is ever gonna get that.
Let's not get too crazy. But like, the National Opens mean something to people. Like, people go to the Canadian, people go travel to the Scottish. Like, people, when the PGA Tour season, when they're done at East Lake, people go to the Irish. People make a point to go to the Irish Open, especially now that it moved later in the year. People for sure make it a point to go to the Irish Open because it tails the end of the year. But like, come on, people, it's another thing you're missing out, that this shit means something to people. Like, make it an elevated event, make it worth something.
Yeah, 100% agree. Sorry, I'm laughing at the thought of Rory McIlroy hitting Vedanta Vallarta and just ripping driver 400 anywhere he wants to and shooting like 35 under.
Okay, so like 3/4 of the National Open are worth something. The other one occurs in February. We don't need to talk about that one so much.
Sorry, Mexico. Don't mean to do it to you like that, but I think that was a little bit more far-fetched.
It is pretty funny though.
It is a little far-fetched. But yeah, man. Yeah, frustrating. Broadcast, the schedule, getting a deal done with Liv, just getting professional golf in a place where it's not a shit show. Whew. All right over good old Jay Monahan's head. How this guy still has a job? I have absolutely no idea, Ross.
Technically, he got a promotion.
Yeah, don't understand it. You got anything else? Oh, actually, one final thing before we get to the BMW Championship. I know we're approaching an hour here, but since we just talked about professional golf still not being organized, and it doesn't seem like there's any indication that we're getting closer. If anything, it's probably the opposite direction. More reports, interestingly enough, surfacing over the weekend about Jon Rahm having buyer's remorse. And I think, you hear one rumor and you could chalk it up to the old mill. But we've heard enough of this now, and just kind of considering, I think Jon Rahm's attitude and his demeanor, I 100% believe that he regrets joining Liv, and I firmly believe he believed that the two sides were closer in talks and that him going was going to potentially kind of nudge this thing over the edge. And obviously, that hasn't been the case. It's been a little bit lackluster. Rahm was not really in the mix at all in the four major championships this year very much. I 100% believe that if Jon Rahm could undo this, he would.
So I want your opinion, because I think there's two ways to look at this, and I think they can both be, confounded into the same thing. Do I believe Jon Rahm regrets leaving the tour for Liv? Yes. Yes, I do. Do I believe that that move is having an overall profound effect on like his mentality, everything, like it affects him physically and mentally? No, I do not. I think I think he was just in a rough patch and bouncing back. So I think it's two things can be true at the same time. That yes, I do believe Jon Rahm regrets making the move. I think he did think him going over would be a bigger domino falling and making all this occur than what happened. But at the same time, do I think this is like mentally and affecting and fucking him up, and like he lies awake at night like, oh, I should have never done? No, I don't think that's the case either.
Yeah.
I think he regrets it, but I think like it is what it is at this point. Like he's still one of the best fucking golfers in the world. He's still going to be one of the best golfers in the world. I think he would prefer to be on the PGA Tour if he could, but I don't think that's going to stop him from. I don't think anything is holding him back or like mentally affecting, fucking him up. Like people report and say like his psyche's all off. No, it's not. No, it's not. He went through a patch just like every fucking golfer and their mother have gone through in her career. He went through a down stretch for a year and a half. We got people still coming out of. We got people like Jordan Spieth going on year 3 of a down stretch. Right? it can happen to It can happen to anyone. So I think it's one of those situations where two things can be true at once. Yes, I do think he regrets joining Liv and wants to be on the tour, but I don't think it has a major effect on him. I don't think it's fucking with his game or anything. I think it is what it is. He is playing where he's playing now. He thought it would be a bigger effect in the long run than it truly was, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Speaking of Jordan Spieth, though, surgery for Jordan, which I think we've been talking about on the show for 3, 4
since February or March. I think it's the first time you and I mentioned, like, just bite the bullet and do it, and ultimately pride delayed the inevitable, and we'll see how bad it fucks him up in the long run.
Yeah. I think I actually heard someone bring this up, and I didn't fully like wrap my head around it or even think about it until I heard someone mention it. I think the reason Jordan Spieth continued to play was because he wanted that top 50 spot, which would put him into all the signature events for next year, which I believe as of right now, he's not going to be in the signature events, although we all know Jordan Spieth is going to get that. He's going to get that old Webb Simpson. He's going to get that old Webb Simpson spot.
I was gonna say there's two things. The one that pissed me off is the fact that Webb Simpson got into all these events with sponsorship exemption, right? If we go down the road next year and every one of these Jordan Spieth gets a sponsorship exemption, I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, that fucking makes sense. Why would you not do that? Like, yeah, I think if we're going on a scale, there's Webb Simpson getting a sponsorship exemption, and there's Jordan Spieth getting a sponsorship exemption because hurt, whatever. They're not even in the same fucking ballpark. Like, so if people want to bitch and moan about, oh, Jordan got an exemption and is playing in this next year, like, yeah, fucking of course he did, because he needs to play in that. Because when he's on, he can win that fucking event, compared to Webb Simpson probably isn't going to make the cut at this thing.
Oh, and trust me, the PGA Tour is going to be giving Jordan Spieth those sponsorships. Fans all across the United States, even if they don't know golf, they know the name Jordan Spieth, and that will get people to show out 1,000%.
And let's be honest, professional golf is better when Jordan is in the running.
Yeah.
When like I love Jordan. Jordan's one of my favorite players out there. It actually pisses me off partially that Jordan took this long to just do the damn thing. Like if you're a golf sickle like us, Jordan, your wrist is basically a goddamn cast every goddamn weekend. Like just fix it, please. We can tell everything is wrong.
Which is a shame because if you actually look at his numbers, he had one of the best driving seasons he's ever had. And that was always a huge flaw of his. He's hitting it longer than he ever has. What are kind of last thing I'll ask you before we get into this week's BMW Championship? What are your way too early? What's your way too early outlook on Jordan Spieth for the 2025 season? Are you excited? Like, are you high on his chances to get back in the winner's circle, or do you think it's going to be another little bit of a grind?
I am, as long this is barring the surgery goes well, there's no setback in recovery. I think you hit it right on the head. It's one of the best driving seasons he's had in his career. I mean, everything else, when the wedges, everything, he's a fucking wizard. You're a wizard, yeah. Harry. Like, I would go as far as saying, if everything goes well, if he stays on track, I would expect Jordan Spieth ends the drought at some point next year.
Yeah. If he's able to keep the driver, it's going to be interesting to see those first few starts when he does come back. I think the surgery has him listed out to 3 months. Is that correct? It'll be interesting. Yeah. Interesting to see if he comes back for the Hero World Challenge Tigers event at all in December, if he's going to play there or if he's just going to give himself the full rest of the 2024 campaign off. But just even when he does return full-time to the tour, if you see those driving numbers right off the rip looking like they were last year and a fixed wrist, yeah, I'm going to back Jordan Spieth getting back into the winner's circle if he's able to keep those numbers up. But Ross, we're almost at an hour. Let's get to this week's BMW Championship. The second leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs is heading to Colorado. It's the first time that the PGA Tour is returning to Castle Pines Golf Club since 2006. Previously held the International on the PGA Tour from 1986 to 2006. However, it wasn't a standard scoring event. They used the modified Stableford scoring, which we now see at the Barracuda Championship. But Ross, I'm really interested to see how this course is going to play. And I actually heard someone mention in the golf community on social media today that Good actually played with Wyndham Clark at Castle Pines Golf Club and released a video about it. So I'm definitely going to dive into it to get some visuals on this course. I have already made some bets, but for those who haven't or are looking for a little more info on Castle Pines Golf Club or maybe what stats you should be paying attention to. First, I did drop my preview article as I always do on Monday. Shameless plug. Go and check that out at ontapsportsnet.com to get my full thoughts on Castle Pines Golf Club. But it's a little bit of a mystery, Ross, because we have never seen this course in action in a standard PGA Tour event. It's been a while since we've seen the PGA Tour in Denver. Elevation mountain golf isn't something we get a whole lot of these days. And on the scorecard, you see this bad boy listed at over 8,100 yards, which will make it the longest track ever featured on the PGA Tour. However, because of the elevation, it is not going to play that long. I've seen multiple people who are a lot smarter than I am in terms of converting altitude to yardage range. Most people who are deep into those statistics expect this to play somewhere around a 7,200 to 7,300 yard par 72. There's 4 par 5s out there, and because of the carry distance, I think they're going to be really gettable, even though one's like 655 yards. There is one that's also 532 yards, which comes in at number 17. So got to think that's going to be an easy green for guys to reach into. Could lead for some swings down the stretch. But all in all, Ross, this does look like a pretty stern tee to green test. Slightly narrow fairways. They're 30 yards wide on average, but this course does feature 4-inch fairway rough. There's 10 holes that feature water hazards, and there's loads of sand bunkers, 77 of them, along with firm and fast bent grass green complexes, which are kind of a staple of Jack Nicklaus, who designed this course back in 1981. So I do think because of the altitude, and it's definitely not going to play as long as the yardage is listed, I do expect it to be a little bit easier probably than what we saw last week and what we got at Olympia Fields last year for the BMW Championship, which unfortunately was even watered down a little bit because of the weather. We had previously seen Jon Rahm win that tournament at Olympia Fields at -4. Victor Hovland gets it done at -16. I'd anticipate a winning score probably around somewhere in the -20 range, Ross. I just think someone or a couple of guys are going to find a way to rack up birdies on this track. There are 4 par 5s, which just are such good opportunities for scoring for these guys nowadays. But I'm really going to be dialed in on guys who are in good form, really good total drivers, guys that can crush the golf ball and put themselves in good spots, and then elite approach play and just don't be a liability on the bent grass putting surfaces. Those are kind of the things that I'm looking at. But again, if you want my full dive on Castle Pines Golf Club, you can find my course preview at ontapsportsnet.com. But Ross, I'm excited to hear who you are in on this week. I know you got a little bit of extra coin in the old betting account on Monday morning. That always makes for a fun start to the day when those odds boards come out. So go ahead and take me through who you got here at the top. We got Scotty at +330, Xander at +550, Rory at 12-1 currently. I do still think there's a 14 at Bet Rivers Enhanced. Morikawa's at 14-1, and then Hideki Hovland at 18 with Patrick Cantlay at 20. So out of those big 7, let's call it, there at the top. Let me know your thoughts and who you're on, if any, here at the top of the board.
So this is where it starts to narrow down, being one of those weird events. We only got 50 in the field. With that being said, I am cutting it down. We're not having a 5-man card this weekend. We are going to have a 4 because I doubled down at the top. I have both Collin Morikawa and Rory McIlroy at a respective 14.
Yeah, so seeing Rory at that number is most definitely enticing. And I've talked about how there is a little bit of guesswork involved with Castle Pines Golf Club, but at elevation, with Rory's potential with the driver, you would think on paper this would be a pretty good spot for him. And that's a number that you don't see around Rory McIlroy's name very often. And he gets bigger odds as the field shrinks down from 70 to 50. I did think about Rory this morning. I don't think I'm ultimately going to end up there, but I don't think I could blame anyone. Even though Rory looked a little bit lackluster, to put it nicely, last week, I wouldn't blame anyone for backing Rory McIlroy at that type of number that we don't see very often. And as far as Collin Morikawa goes, man, I am nervous. I don't think I'm going to back him this week, as I have backed him many times throughout the year, and he has yet to pay off for me. He is someone who resides in Las Vegas, not quite the altitude that we're getting this week in Colorado, but is familiar with playing at altitude outside of last week, which was one of his worst iron performances in like 2 years. He's been dialed in with the irons. Probably the man I'm most scared of in terms of like FOMO betting. I don't think I'm going to get there ultimately either, but I would probably, even though it didn't go well for him last week, I'd probably rather bet Collin over Rory, just me personally.
Yeah, I'm cutting myself short this week where normally I wouldn't touch Rory, but it's one of those you never. I honestly I can't remember the last time I've seen Rory at a number like that. So
Yeah.
fell into my range where I prefer him to be. I hate to be the asshole that doesn't bite on it because he finally. I'm very strict with what my ceiling is and where my cap is. He fell below my cap. Let's ride, where you don't get to really play that very often. So you play that horse when you have it.
Yeah.
And then it turned into a double down of I've ridden Collin so long this year, waiting for him to break through,
Preach.
thinking that he's going to break through, that we've officially just hit the point where it's too fucking late in the year for me to just be like, oh fuck Collin.
Yeah.
Where I mean we got 2 tournaments left. He's gonna probably be on my card, both of them, and we're just gonna hope that the praise and everything we've been giving to Colin this whole time, he finally proves us right and gets one of them, because he's so fucking good. He's playing so well. It's a miracle. I honestly think he's the best player on the tour this year that doesn't have a win. And I think that's possibly the easiest case you could make for anyone. I don't think there's really anyone else you could argue this year that has played better that doesn't have a win yet.
No.
So it's just it's this late in the year. I'm not going to be an asshole and throw him out. I'm probably going to ride him this week. I'm going to ride him again probably next week, and just until we end the year and he disappoints me for being a rider. But after that, we are going to get a little interesting. I do have 2 more picks, and they're a little bit further down the board, but I have my reasons.
I understand. The top of the board is kind of where I'm still dancing a little bit. I did bet Patrick Cantlay at 25-1. I thought that was just too good of a number for a guy who's done well at the BMW Championship in the past, albeit it's been at different courses. But bent grass greens, always love Pat on courses that feature bent grass. He's been really good in altitude in a short sample size, albeit really good in his career on Jack Nicklaus designs as well, and got off to a really poor start. Had a really bad round 1 at St. Jude last week, and those final 3 rounds played really, really solid. And that was kind of the same case at the Open Championship, where he finished T25. Played really solid in 3 of the 4 rounds, just didn't have his best stuff on Saturday. That kind of moved him out of contention. But 25-1, I just thought was too big of a number on Pat. But I really think I'm torn between Hideki and Victor is kind of where I'm torn. I don't know if I want to back Hideki, considering how well he did on the greens last week, and that, like, he led the field in putting, and it still, like, almost wasn't enough for him. But he has been better throughout the course of the season than Victor has been, although Victor is very enticing coming off a really good week. Just from an outsider perspective, who would you be more inclined to bet if you had to bet one of the 2 at the same number? Would it be Hideki or Victor for you?
Victor.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking too. I think I am probably going to end up betting Victor. Total driving ability, the irons have been really good. Am I scared that he can't chip to save his life? And if he could chip, ultimately we know Hideki went birdie, but if he chipped and made par at 17, who knows?
If it helps with your argument at all, ultimately I threw all of these picks out because I went with the Rory Colin at the top, and then I went a little further down the board to kind of help supplement my picks.
Yeah.
But the argument I had in the middle, I looked at Rory and Victor, at Hideki and Victor for a little bit. Ultimately, I threw out Victor or Hideki, and the one I had the hardest time with was looking at Ludwig and Victor in that middle. And I actually threw Ludwig out and leaned toward Victor until Rory fell into that range. Then he was the one that I ended up tossing. Personally, I think Hideki used all the magic last week at Southwind. I think that was the big one. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. And it's exactly like you said, him being the best almost still wasn't good enough.
Yeah, that's kind of where I feel the same way as well. Ludwig, like, sets up nicely for this course. I just kind of think he's hit a wall. I think he's exhausted, which I don't blame him for. Like, it's been a whirlwind last year for this guy.
I ultimately bailed on him because that big break, like, he's already got a win, but that big breakthrough win, I don't see it coming this year.
Yeah,
and it's not a knock against him. We've had this talk multiple times. I think he is just peaking and showing up at the wrong time. There is just so much goddamn talent out there right now. Where in years past, in tours past, you're looking at Ludwig probably has 3 or 4 wins. And if you go back 15 years ago, he probably got 3 or 4 wins this year. Instead, he's still looking for that big one. So ultimately, I don't think it's coming this year. I think maybe early next year to like right around the halfway point. I could see it being the big breakthrough. Like when we get around API, something like that. Maybe that's where you start to get the big one. But ultimately, I threw him out because I just don't see it happening. And then Victor was going to be on my card until Rory fell into that threshold.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely understand that, man. Completely understand. Last thing I'll say about this top range, I don't think I'm going to end up on Colin, like I said. And because of that, I was ultimately scared because I've been betting Morikawa all year. I'm like, well, if I don't bet Morikawa this week, what are his odds? Let's go check his odds to see what they are to win the FedEx Cup. 14-1. I'm like, you're telling me Colin to win this week or to have a good finish this week, plus for him to win next week, or the same odds for him to win this week? I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. So I ultimately ended up not doing that because I was hoping I could catch Colin at like a 25 to win the FedEx Cup or something along those lines. But nope, they weren't offering that. So yeah, it'll probably end up being Victor and Cantlay for me from this range. But moving down here, we got Fleetwood at 25, Finau at 33, Wyndham at 33, Henley and Burns at 35, Billy Ho and Connors at 40, and then Aaron Rye and JT both at 45. You got anyone in this range, Ross, at all?
I have one person.
Who you got?
And it's going to be my dumbass brain again. I've said it a million times. I'm not going down that road again. Well, here we are. We're going again. The boy's going home. Give me the hometown, dude. Give me Wyndham.
I hit Wyndham as well.
Give me Wyndham in Colorado. Being in the home environment really, really impressed me last week again. Just it's that he's so like this, but I love the vibe, the way he played one of the most difficult courses on the fucking tour. He played phenomenal. And I think you could call me a little stitious, not superstitious. I like the vibe he had in the round he put on to end the tournament, and I like the vibe of going home.
Yeah, I'm all aboard.
Give me you could say it's dumb brain stupid. I just think there's something about that vibe, and I think that means something. Played a really good tournament at Southwind, and now he's going to Denver. He's playing at home, and I really think that does come into effect for some people.
Yeah, I'm all in on Windy C returning back to Colorado. And we each week, Ross, we come up with narratives or reasons in our head to have a belief for a certain guy or a reason to back a guy. Just from learning about Wyndham Clark since bursting onto the scene, and then of course him being featured on Netflix's Full Swing, it feels like his mental is really important to him. And like when he's mentally in the right place, he's ready to rock and roll. I think the vibes are gonna be good for him this week.
There's no place like home.
No place like home. He's going to be very comfortable. Yeah, maybe there's a little added pressure, but I think that's something that he's going to welcome. I think he's going to be confident. He knows this course, plays in elevation, even though he doesn't live in Colorado anymore. And he's admitted he doesn't play in this type of elevation nearly as much as he did growing up. He still does reside in Scottsdale. There's a little bit of elevation there in Arizona. So I like to see that. And quietly, outside of missing the cut at the Open, which Wyndham at major championships this year has been very disappointing. Outside of that, though, he's finished 14th or better in each of his last 4 starts. And like outside of the majors, the signature big boy events have really been his jam, man. Winning at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, second at Arnold Palmer Invitational, T2 at the Players, T3 at the RBC Heritage, T9 at the Travelers. Like he shows up in these big events, and the way that he's grinded after having like 2 really kind of bad starts in a row, both at the Olympics and at St. Jude, to go and rally and make both of those high-end finishes. Like, yeah, I think Wyndham's game is in a good spot right now. 35-1 was more than fair to me to get on him. So we're both riding with Wyndham Clark this week. I believe I'll be doing a show with Joey Ricotta on Wednesday. I have a feeling he is dubbed the Windy C Whisperer. So I'm hoping that he's going to be on him as well. The only other one that I was really looking at in this range, I gave Tony Finau a thought, Ross, because he is a Utah boy, someone who has a lot of experience playing at elevation. The approach numbers have been really good. But quite honestly, if you're asking me who I'd rather have to win a tournament at the same number, Wyndham Clark or Tony Finau, both with elevation backgrounds, it's Wyndham Clark for me against this field every day of the week, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it seems like a dumb brain thing, but it just comes into there's something about the way he is, the playing in Colorado, being there. It just gives me a vibe of good luck, like good luck, good vibes. I feel like if there's a place that were to ever to fucking click and him put himself into contention to win the FedEx Cup itself, it why not do it at home?
Yeah, we're riding the vibes train this week, Ross. I have thought a little bit about Billy Horschel. I think there's still a 45 or 50 to 1 out there on Bet Rivers Enhanced. He is playing some good golf, struck the ball beautifully at the St. Jude. Just his putter went ice cold throughout the weekend, but still finished T10 there, even though he couldn't get a putt to drop those final 36 holes. He's someone I've thought about a little bit in this range. I don't know if I'm ultimately ending up going to get there. But Ross, just opening this bad boy up 50 to 100. You got is your final bet in this range? I'm gonna guess it is.
My final bet is in that range. And I'm going with a bubble boy. Ooh. And a bubble boy in multiple ways. Do you know who the odd man out on the international team right now is?
Is it Taylor Pendrith?
Taylor Pendrith has fallen out of the top 12. Adam Hadwin did jump him. So this course actually sets up really, really well for Taylor Pendrith. I have Taylor Pendrith at 70. Actually, no, 75 on my card.
You want to hear something that's going to make you even happier that you probably don't know? There is a Corn Ferry Tour event called the Ascendant that's been played at this course in Colorado since 2019. Taylor Pendrith owns 2 top 6 finishes on this course in his Corn Ferry Tour career. So
Taylor Pendrith is my chalk. It's in there. Put it in. But ultimately, I went not only because this course I thought set up well for him. I do think that international team bubble. I do think the pressure is on. We know he wants to make that team. He has been very vocal that he wants to make that team, especially since his win earlier this year. That was one thing he pointed out, that when he put himself in contention for that was a big goal for him. And right now he has slipped a little bit lately where he is on the outside looking in, but barely.
Yeah. I think ultimately, Ross, if I think he's going to end up on that team regardless, but having the guaranteed certainty, I think is still going to be on his mind this week. And I can solidify my spot. I still think he winds up there, but regardless of that, I think he's a good play from down here, this far down in the board. And I don't think there's very many of them. As far as guys I'm looking at here, I have made one bet. I bet Will Zalatoris at 90 to 1. Won on this course in 2019 on the Corn Ferry Tour, was the winner here. Will Zalatoris showed some life last week at St. Jude. Hasn't been very good for him as of late, but the ball striking started to come back. I know when he's right, he's capable of hanging in a field like this, and I believe in his total driving abilities. And he actually gained 2 strokes putting last week, and bent grass has been his preferred surface. So I gave a shot on Willie Z. A lot of love on Nick Dunlap. He actually opened, I think, at 120 to 1, Ross. Has been bet down to 75. I don't really think I could argue anyone with going with Nick Dunlap at that price tag. I just ultimately ended up choosing Will Zalatoris over him.
I gave it a look this morning. Ultimately, I went with the Taylor Pendrith when I was looking at different models and reading some other people's articles and what they thought. A very common name that was coming through from most experts in that range was Taylor Pendrith. And then when I did a little background digging and seeing, this course just sets up really well for him. And then when you messaged me earlier about, hey, let's talk about, President's Cup standings, that ultimately led me to actually cash it and put the money on him when I realized he's the first man technically on the outside. That he's only got 2 more chances, and I mean basically he needs to finish well to make Eastlake to keep Eastlake alive this week. And I thought that kind of just doubles down. Really needs to play well the final 2 weeks to solidify his chances of making the international team.
Yeah, just another reason to like Taylor Pendrith. I bet him in the each way market last week because I wanted I think I had a 25-1 on him finishing in the top 6. It looked good through 36 holes. He just couldn't keep it going through the weekend. But I honestly might go and do the same thing for Taylor Pendrith this week, depending on the odds, because I do think just like if he didn't have any results on this course, I think it would set up pretty well for him. He's a really good bent grass putter as well, and he has those 2 high-end Korn Ferry Tour finishes. So, yeah, I like Pendrith from down here. Max Grazerman, your boy, actually has 2 top 10s on this course in the Korn Ferry Tour as well. I don't know if I'm going to go and bet Max Grazerman 100-1 to win.
I couldn't after last week.
I do think...
I don't know if you saw my post on Saturday morning. Good morning, everyone. Let's have a day unless your name is Max. The 2 of you know who you are.
Yes, I did see that. But I do think, and even if you're someone who doesn't think Taylor Pendrith could win this tournament, I think there are ways to make money on a guy like Pendrith or Grazerman this week, just maybe not in the outright market. Same with Davis Thompson. I think he had a 4th place finish here on the Korn Ferry Tour in the past as well. Was popular last week at St. Jude, didn't really wind up pulling through. Again, I don't think I'd bet him to win, but I think he could be like a good DFS player, and some alternate market could make you money. The last one who I have thought about in terms of an actual outright market, and quite honestly, after 50-1, the only guys I'm really thinking about outright would be Will Zalatoris, like I said, who I already bet, or Nick Dunlap 75-1. I think those are really the only winning upside guys from down here. Robert McIntyre 60-1 would be the other one to me. I just think that's a good number. If you look at his underlying stats, still has been striking the ball decently well since coming off that victory, and the short game has been solid. So I wouldn't hate anyone for going to Bobby Mack at that 60-1 number. But yeah, for me, only things I have bet right now are I have Cantlay at 25, Wyndham Clark at 35, and then Will Zalatoris at 90. Still debating whether it's going to be Victor at the top, but it's kind of looking like it's trending in that direction for me.
I need to ask you this weekend, if they show Bobby Mack on TV, I want you to focus on his face when he's playing in whatever outfit he's wearing that clearly Nike supplied to him. Because I've been watching for the past 6 weeks. Every time they focus on him, he's in like some floral or tropical pattern something. And when they focus on his face, it literally looks like Jason Segel from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Like, I wish I wasn't wearing this fucking shirt right now.
Dude, he's like a mini version of Victor. And dude, he's so pasty white. So like those colors that he's wearing stand out so much. I mean, who needs a suntan more than Bobby Mack? Or maybe just anyone from Scotland in general.
Like the one he was wearing this past week, especially with it baking, being 90 degrees, and he's out there in sun sleeves because he's so pasty white that he will burn to a crisp. And like they showed the shirt and he's like pouring sweat and just looks at the camera, and you could just see like, I fucking hate my life, and I fucking hate that I'm wearing this shirt right now.
Definitely. The 3 guys who rock the sun sleeves 24/7 regardless of the weather. Max Grazerman, Bobby Mack, and the Seagull, Chuck Hoffman, because the Seagull never gets hot.
and fucking, hey, Matthew Pavone, because he doesn't want to ruin that ink.
I think low-key Vic Perez might wear them too.
Yeah.
Could be wrong about that. Whew. All right, hour 25, Ross. Did we forget about anything along the way? I don't believe we did.
No, we will circle back on a segment. Next week, I'd like us to do a rundown of the international team, because there's about 15-20 minutes of a conversation there. If you look at the international 1 through 12, wow, I honestly don't know who you knock out for Pendrith.
Definitely noted. We'll get to that next week, which will be fitting because the top 6 for the international squad and the United States will officially be locked in for this year's President's Cup. But good show as always, Ross. Appreciate you for your time, and appreciate everyone's time to who tuned in on today's episode. Always a reminder to go and follow Golf on Tap if you don't already on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, go and show some love to our page on X at OnTapGolf. You can find me at Jack Bushman2. Go and give Ross a follow as well at RossJohn22. Until next time, everyone, best of luck this week. It's kind of the last real odds board that we get of the 2024 regular season. Of course, next week we're going to have the starting stroke scores. Scotty or Xander will be starting at -10. It's a little bit wonky, doesn't really resonate with anyone, I think, but we'll still be here to talk about it and preview it and break down what goes down this week at Castle Pines. Interested to see how that's going to play out, but best of luck to everyone this week. And again, thanks for tuning into another episode of Golf on Tap. Until next time, crack 'em, lock 'em. We'll see you then.